Hello, my fellow viewers and subscribers. This is Supercholatemilkshake, and I am here with another daily dose of chocolate. Now, today I am going to be talking about AI, and I'm going to give out quite a few unfiltered thoughts here, so I'm sorry if you're a stan or you want to stand up for AI, because I'm going to disagree with you, okay? Look, there's probably only maybe 3 major use case scenarios, and I'll get to them when I get to them. But first, I think I want to give you a little bit of my own history on AI first, because I think it's been around a lot longer than most people think it has. And honestly, it might also reveal a little bit about the use case scenario that I will probably definitely use it for, but I'll get to the history first. So first of all, a lot of people are probably going to say that the AI hype started right around the 2020s, okay? And honestly, I'm not going to disagree with that. Actually, that's kind of when a lot of major corporations have started pushing for this whole AI algorithmic push. But I would have to make the argument that this whole artificial intelligence thing started way before the push started happening. Honestly, I remember reading scripts in the late 2010s that was AI generated and such, and little book segments and such that were AI generated, that was generated by a robot and a bot writer, after being fed scripts of movies and games and, television shows and books, and basically it came up with its own thing. And sure, it was basically kind of assisted, kind of like an autocorrect type of situation, but, back in the day, basically it came up with some really weird and wild stuff. Heck, I remember there was a script for Batman where Batman punches a penguin, Alfred calls Batman Mattress Wayne, and Alfred also gives birth to Robin. Yeah, it's just about as wild and crazy as it sounds. Oh yes, and both the Joker and Two-Face know where the Batcave is, apparently. Despite the fact that we all know it's underneath Wayne Manor, but that's neither here nor there. That was probably my favorite example out of all of them, but there were other ones that also kind of bordered on horror story too. One where it was imitating a Bob Ross skit, which, that one is kind of nightmarish. Okay? That one was very, very nightmarish. But that's neither here nor there. The real truth is that basically when it comes down to it, that's probably one of the instances of AI generating something of its own. But I think if I had to go a little bit further back, there were chatbots that existed back in the early 2000s too. Early to late 2000s, I remember. And basically, it was I think there was one that was called Eve or something like that. I forget. I remember a lot of YouTubers messed with it back in the day, but when it first came out. And it had this really creepy lady face that would mimic the mouth movements with this voice. And, it was kind of creepy. Sure, it was a little bit fun to mess around with, but I don't think it was necessarily the best thing to mess around with. And it was kind of creepy, but again, it was kind of impressive with what it could do, and it held some lasting conversation sometimes, and granted, it wasn't perfect by any means, by no means, but you know what? It was certainly weirdly good for what it was. But if I had to go back to, the very earliest instance that I can possibly think of when it comes down to artificial intelligence, it would be back in the 1980s, arcade, Pac-Man. Seriously. I know a lot of people are probably going to be questioning me on this, but seriously, the Ghost had its own version of artificial intelligence, where basically they would have the decision logic to either go to a certain corner of the maze and rotate around that certain corner of the maze, or pursue Pac-Man in its own weird way. For example, Inky and Blinky. I think it was Inky and Blinky. I forget. I have to look it up again, but I know that one of those 3 ghosts that I just mentioned, Clyde, Inky, or Blinky, would pursue you and try to corner you. I know one of them will definitely chase you down, and for Pinky, I know that she will chase you down, but then when she gets too close, try to veer the other direction. But you could also still run into her by accident, by the way, because that's happened to me many times. But, that's something about, the earliest AI that I could possibly think of. And you know what that it was used for? A video game. And, like I said, again, I might be spoiling a little bit of my use case scenario there, but I'll get a little bit more into detail a little bit later. because I'll explain a little bit more later. But, it was used for a video game. Now, these days, it's trying to generate videos and images and all that other stuff. But let's face it, I think it kind of sucks at that. Like, it sucks at making a story too, because we've already seen instances of it. I mean, I don't even need to go back to that Batman thing again, because, wow, I mean, everybody pretty much can describe it as an acid trip, and you know what? I'm not going to disagree with that. I mean, I think that's fully 100% an acid trip right there. But, yeah, it's not really necessarily writing very good stories. It's making very nonsense dialogue. And then when it comes down to making videos, like, it doesn't really necessarily work out very well. I mean, like, I'm sitting here animating something for the Shake It Up Jam, which, by the way, I still don't have a full announcement for yet as of recording this video, and probably as of releasing this video. But, hey, the page is up. You can go down there and check it out and join if you want to. But I've also got a rule for AI as well that I'll get into here in just a little bit, and why I have this rule specifically. But, like, when it comes down to it, it doesn't really necessarily do very good with art, and it doesn't really necessarily do very good with video. It always seems to have, like, something that was weird, off, and honestly doesn't really necessarily match what it even produced. Just so you know. I mean, all it is really just taking a whole bunch of knowledge that's off of databases out there that, already resist or comply with already pre-existing human knowledge, and just kind of compiling it all together and making something a little bit different out of it, really. And that's all it's really doing. I mean, you can't really necessarily use AI without plagiarizing, in a way, or in a sense, which basically kind of makes you wonder why you even use it at all, if it's just going to plagiarize, And again, that's kind of the thing. And, of course, if I ever have to say anything else about that, it's just the fact that it's also requiring you to input something. It still requires you to have some kind of imagination, some kind of thought. And even then, it's not really necessarily helping you do any better by having the AI do it for you. Basically, you do better when you do it yourself, It's like, for example, the animation thing. Like, I know some people are probably going to be wondering, why on earth am I not using an AI to do the animation that I kind of want to do for the Shake It Up Jam announcement? Well, if I had to tell you, it's because I rather prefer to use my brain. I rather have that whole interaction of having to move my hand in the proper places and, correct my own mistakes and learn and adapt and to grow from it, because, it requires brain power to do that, and it makes me use it, and I learn and I grow, as I mentioned before. And again, that's something I think a lot of people tend to forget and tend to overlook, because, granted, I don't think it's necessarily bad to be always lazy, because sometimes animation, you can be lazy. Video game development, yes, you can also be lazy in that one too. But, I mean, we can somewhat be lazy, but not 100%, because, we'll get to that when I get to that. But, when it comes down to it, it still requires effort. It still requires time. It requires soul and effort. I mean, soul, really. And if I had to say anything, the reason why I banned AI from the Shake It Up Jam is because I want to see what you do as a person. What you can make. Not what a machine can make. What you could come up with. What answers that you come up with yourself when it comes down to combining the two things together. What you guys can do when you put your heads together as a team. Or if you're working by yourself, what you can create by yourself. Like, again, part of the reason why I don't want anybody using AI in my jam. Because, again, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's ethical. And really, it doesn't challenge you. Because that's the whole point about a game jam, is to challenge yourself. Really. And, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some people who are probably going to look at that and try to overwrite that rule or try to defend themselves or whatever. But, still, no. I am not going to allow that. Okay? And look, if I have to go back to, well, okay, well, first of all, also, there is something else that I also got to mention about AI, too, that I might as well talk about, too, how companies are just definitely trying to enforce this down our throats now, too, like it's the future and all that, but honestly, most of this hype is pretty much leading them to bankruptcy anyway, because, number one, well, duh, the AI isn't going to necessarily pay out. They're paying more into it than they are getting back from it. Even with even if people have to pay to use the models, they're still not going to necessarily get that much back from it because they still have to pay for electricity for the data centers and all that other stuff. And guess what? If people are also paying for electricity and their taxes for the land for those data centers too, because they're going to end up causing major tax holes because of what most of our lawmakers in the US have allowed them to get away with, like, honestly, in this case, it's really going to end up driving them even more out of business than they normally would because nobody's going to have the money to invest in this stuff anyway. It's basically like shooting yourself in the foot primarily. So why on earth are they keeping doing it? And why on earth are they still busy trying to convince these lawmakers that this is going to benefit everybody in the long run? I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, it's bad enough Microsoft has bastardized their own system. I mean, the reason why everybody calls Windows 11 Microslop Wind Blows 11, you know? It's like a former shell of Windows 10, and you know what? I would even consider that Windows 10, heck, even Windows 8, was nowhere near as good as Windows 7. And heck, I will even stand up and say that Windows XP was pretty much peak Microsoft at the time. Like, it's ridiculous to think about this, okay? And, like, it's sad that Microsoft is going down this route. But then, of course, it's not just Microsoft, too. NVIDIA, AMD, and even Intel are also going down this route, too. And I think it's kind of upsetting with the fact that NVIDIA is just trying to promote this whole AI upscaling thing. And you know what? Look, when it comes down to upscaling, I'm not against it in any way, shape, or form. Because when I first saw the technology, when they first announced it, it wasn't bad for what it was. It was basically a way of allowing people with older hardware, slower computers, to run modern games without any hitches whatsoever. Well, okay, maybe lag would be a thing, but other than that, it wouldn't be much of a problem for them to run these older games. They would be able to run it at smooth frame rates and graphics that basically kind of matched a computer that was more high-end, or even mid-tier at the very best. And you know what? I wasn't against that. I liked that idea. It was an excellent idea for the games that, you know what, were already optimized to a fault. Like, every dot, every I's dot, every T's crossed, like, all that stuff. Basically, those games could run on older hardware without a fault, and it would actually be a great thing for people who couldn't go out and buy new hardware. Now these days, it's basically an excuse for optimization. It is basically like, oh yeah, if you don't like it, just run it with the frame generation and AI upscaling. I'm sorry, but how is this better? How is this providing better performance or making your games look any better? Because all I'm seeing is Vaseline-smeared games more and more often. And honestly, it's just getting kind of upsetting to see this happen more and more often, and frame lag happening on GPUs that shouldn't be happening on. Like, come on. We all know that the 4090 is way more powerful than anything that came out 10 years before it. It's like 90 times, not even close to that. And yet, well, okay, maybe I'm over-exaggerating here. Maybe I'm under-exaggerating here. You guys might know. I didn't really necessarily look this up before I started doing this. I'm sorry. But, you know, like, and that has to rely on upscaling? Like, I'm sorry. The 1050, the 5090? Like, come on. Seriously, that should be the top tier card. The best bang for your buck card. And it's only getting out mid-performance when you run it raw? I'm sorry, but what kind of world are we living in? What kind of reason is this for happening? Oh yeah, that's right. NVIDIA is no longer focusing on gaming graphics anymore. Apparently they're busy focusing on AI. Might as well just call them no longer GPUs, but we might as well call them AIPU. Which, by the way, kind of also sums up my statement on AI, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. Basically, it's just an AIPU. Basically, an AI processing unit. And you know what? I hate that. I hate that a lot because you know what? It's far removed from what NVIDIA originally intended to do years ago when they first entered in the market. Same thing goes for AMD too, with their graphics and processing. It's way far removed from what ATI started years ago. And yes, we all know that AMD ended up buying out ATI years ago. I mean, seriously, that's why AMD is a part of the graphics processor market, because they bought out ATI years ago. Sorry, I had to take a drink. But anyway. Still, like, that's something I gotta say, and that's something that I think I should probably bring up. And again, it's upsetting that most of this is being more focused on AI and upscaling than anything else. I mean, developers are no longer having reason to go out and optimize their games because, oh yeah, upscaling will fix it. Oh yeah, the frame generation can fix it. When really, it ends up making the games run worse, and sometimes even look worse. Even if some of the technology has gotten a lot better, I'd still say it doesn't look nearly as good as it would be if you were to just run it raw, you know? Without the DLSS and the upscaling and all that other stuff. And you know what? It's just kind of sad that they had to rely on all this. Despite the fact that, again, it was meant for older hardware, for computers that basically were like pre-2000s, you know? Or, well, pre-2010, you know? For those computers to run those kinds of games without any hitches or any frame lags or whatever. And granted, I know I'm probably over-exaggerating here, but you get the point. It's not a bandage for optimization, and honestly, it's just upsetting to see that most of these companies now these days are no longer focusing on that, and rather just focusing on shipping a product. Rather than just fixing the game in the first place, and getting out something that's good and playable, and people want to play, instead of something that people will gripe about for years and years to come. So, anyway, I think I kind of meandered from the point here, though. So, what are my 3 major use cases for AI? Well, if I had to give out my first major use case, a tool to help you program. Yeah, I know. It's probably kind of the weak... Okay, I am starting with some of my weakest arguments here. I will get into my strongest one here real soon, but the weakest one is, again, using it as a tool to help you program, because, you know, basically it kind of shows you what to do, what not to do. The best I probably use is that summary that Google gives at the top of every search result page, but that's it. Like, I don't get any further than that, because really all it is just taking a look at these pages and trying to combine most of its knowledge into one result, which again goes back into the whole, pre-existing human knowledge thing. And again, it wouldn't have done it if I hadn't given it the prompt. But even then, it's like, I don't really fully trust it, and I go into most of the sites that it sources, most of the sites that I find inside the search down below, and heck, sometimes I'll even watch some of the videos that it will recommend me, or either that, the videos that I can find down below, or if I just click on video tabs on the Google search. The second use case scenario, and of course there are going to be some voice actors that might be mad at me, but, well, not exactly 100% mad at me, but again, this is probably going to be overcome easily again, and again, it's a very weak argument, reading off a long list of player names. Look, when it comes down to it, I don't think any voice actor just wants to sit down inside a booth and read off a ridiculously long list of names, including some names that are absolutely ridiculous that they probably have no chance of saying, and more than likely also end up having to read off names that they probably wouldn't have the chance of reading off in normal life anyway. I don't think they want to necessarily sit down and waste their time like that, even if they're getting paid well for it. I mean, heck, there's another instance I could probably bring up with where they didn't have to do this, but, like, there is a game out there where they quite literally read off a long list of names, and even then they don't cover a broad spectrum of the names. It's a huge list, but it doesn't cover off every single name out there. And yes, even my name is inside there. But I think she was getting tired. The voice actor herself was getting tired by the time she got to the J's. In case you're wondering what game this is Detective Barbie from, like, the late 90s, early 2000s. And I do remember, like, her saying John with like an aggressive force, like, oh, you're doing a good job, John, you know? Like, what the heck? You get my attention, you know? But, you know, I think it's like by the time she got to that point, she was just tired of having to read off all these names, you know? And honestly, I couldn't blame her. Because you know what? It was a very long list of names, and sure, they got a lot of people from a broad range, but, you know, there's some names that I wouldn't even find inside the US inside that list, and honestly, it's impressive that they managed to get some of these names inside there. But still, it's just kind of sad that she had to sit down and read all those names off at least once. I would have been irritated after that, which again kind of makes the whole point about having the AI do it itself. But even then, most developers have started getting a lot more craftier in avoiding most of that, so that you can still have a very crafty name, but nobody has to say it aloud, which, you know, kind of nullifies that whole point anyway. So I don't even know why on earth I can make that argument. But there is one more argument that I will make for AI. Remember when I brought up the Pac-Man thing? Well, again, that's kind of what I would think about it, using it for, is just making logic trees based off of what the player is doing, and then making an enemy do a certain thing in tactics to that player, and trying to figure out what on earth the player is doing and all that other stuff. And that's pretty much the only other use case I could find for AI, and that's probably the best use case I could probably think about it. Because, really, that's probably the only really use case, because it would be predicting off of the player's move, be trying to figure out the player, and the player could also try to figure out what on earth this AI is trying to do, what on earth this AI is trying to think. But again, this kind of stuff has existed for years now. Like, we've seen it in Pac-Man, we've seen it in Mario, we've seen it in Sonic, we've seen it in Spyro, we've seen it... Actually, I think even Crash had it at one point. We've seen it in Halo, we've seen it in... Sly Cooper, we've seen it with Jak and Daxter, we've seen it with Ratchet and Clank, we've seen it in Legend of Zelda, we've seen it in... There's all these games that I could list off, like Half-Life and all this other stuff, that we've seen this kind of AI in. And basically, when it comes down to it, like, it's kind of boggling to think that that's existed for years, and, you know, people want to just go ahead, turn around, and go like, okay, yeah, no, it can generate videos, it can do all this, when really, technically, sometimes it still struggles with keeping up with the player character too, you know? There are moments when where the player character will do something that is completely and totally unpredictable, and it will not follow that to a T, you know? And again, that's the thing too. Like, also, with all its knowledge and such, it still can be pretty inaccurate, because guess what? It's still having to rely on human knowledge, and when two pieces of human knowledge can contradict each other, but one of them matches the results more than the other, well, it's probably going to go for the one that probably might not be the most accurate. Which, again, only goes to show how dumb and how bad this whole AI algorithm thing is, and why, honestly, I think it should be avoided, and why it shouldn't be promoted by big tech companies the way it is, you know? But anyway, I think I ranted on long enough about this. So anyway, what are you guys' thoughts on AI? Let me know down in the comment down below. And hey, if you're new here, please make sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Hey, I'm also hosting a game jam. The link is down below inside the description. And I'll see you all on the next video. This is Superchocolatemilkshake, signing off.